I was in my room, feeling that pleasant sensation of anxiety in my stomach, with an insatiable desire occupying my thoughts. Yes, you heard right, I was craving male company, the kind that makes you have bolder thoughts. But what can you do when you're in your room and your 21-year-old nephew is sleeping there with you? Well, if you're like me, you choose the most tempting and exciting path. So, full of courage and maybe a little bit of madness, I decided to go after what I wanted. But where did I direct my gaze? Guess, to my nephew. There I was in my room watching him with a mischievous smile. What was I planning to do? That I was about to find out. I gave him a gentle tap on the shoulder to wake him up, and when he opened his eyes, I said I had heard some noises outside and asked him to go check it out. But, in reality, that was just an excuse to get him out of bed. My plan was going perfectly well. He got up worried and I had a sly smile. Slowly he got up without making a sound, as if he were in forbidden territory, and in a way he was. He quickly left the room, adding a dramatic touch to the situation. His eyes soon adjusted to the darkness and I watched as he walked toward the door as if searching for someone. He woke up with the excuse of strange noises outside, but he knew it was just an excuse to get him out of bed. And look, it worked. There he was, walking down the hallway like the protagonist of a movie. His bare feet touched the floor softly, trying not to make any noise. Every step was a small victory, a triumph over the silence of the night. He felt like a movie hero, even though he really just wanted to understand what was going on outside. My nephew looked through the windows as if he were searching for something he didn't even know what it was. He returned with a somewhat confused expression and told me he hadn't seen anything unusual. After a moment of silence, he decided to go to the bathroom. I took the opportunity to turn on the bedroom light and sat on the bed thinking about my plan. Should I do this? Did my nephew want the same thing as me? I lay down on the bed and sighed, wondering if I should continue with my game or let things run their natural course. Before I could decide, I heard a noise coming from the bathroom, a strange sound almost like a whisper. I silently got out of bed and approached the bathroom door, curious to know what my nephew was doing in there. I was going too far. My hormones were running wild and my mind started to wander down dangerous paths. I tried to calm down and convince myself that it was just my imagination. I decided to go back to bed and give him some privacy. So, I curled up under the covers, trying to think of anything other than what my mind kept insisting on projecting. A few minutes, which felt like an eternity, passed while I fought against my thoughts. Then I heard the sound of the bathroom door opening and my nephew coming out. I tried to stay calm as he approached the room. "I'm not sleepy anymore," I said with a forced smile, inviting him to stay awake with me. "Do you want to keep me company while we have breakfast?" My nephew accepted my proposal with a smile and we went to the kitchen together. While we were making breakfast, I tried to calm my hormones, but the tension there was stronger and I could feel my heart beating faster than usual. I desperately tried to focus on anything but these thoughts. After breakfast, we sat at the table and talked about whatever came to mind. I tried to keep the conversation as light as possible, but my hormones were still running high, and every time my nephew smiled at me, I felt a tickle in my stomach calling me. Something I hadn't told him, something that kept me awake many nights, wondering if it was okay. My nephew was obsessed with me. He always wanted something more, something I couldn't give him. And worst of all, he hadn't seen me as his aunt since he was a teenager. I feel his gaze full of longing. Every smile, every kind gesture had a hidden meaning behind it. I tried to ignore it, convince myself it was just a man thing, but I couldn't help but notice how he watched me every time we were together. Come to think of it, maybe that's why he was so eager to join me that morning. It wasn't for the breakfast but to be near me, to have me all to himself for a few moments. As we talked, his gaze kept following me as if he desired something more. I tried to stay calm, but every word that came out of his mouth seemed to have another intention. I couldn't get that feeling out of my head, that certainty that my nephew didn't see me as his aunt but as something more. I never did anything out of respect. That was my premise throughout this time. Despite my nephew's looks, his insinuations and gestures that went beyond what was appropriate, I always kept my distance, trying to ignore what was happening. But now the situation was different. I was at a point in my life where I longed for the company of a man, someone who would be by my side, who would make me feel alive again. And the only person there at that moment was my nephew. I tried to suppress these thoughts, to convince myself it was madness even to consider the idea. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't deny the attraction I felt for him. A little fun never hurt anyone, right? After all, he wanted the same thing as me, right? To me, there's nothing wrong with that. At least that's what I tried to convince myself of as I approached my nephew with a determination that surprised me. Why should I feel guilty for seeking a little fun? My husband was absent that day, and his absence represented the perfect opportunity, a chance to explore what was happening between my nephew and me. At that moment, I just wanted to live in the moment and enjoy. After all, my husband wouldn't know about this. It would be an adventure between my nephew and me, a secret that belonged only to the two of us. I knew I was playing with fire. I suggested having an affair, a secret affair between him and me, where no one else could discover what was going on between us. I made it clear to him that everything that happened between us would stay between us, a pact of silence that belonged only to us. He agreed. He nodded, showing his willingness to have a clandestine adventure with me, and at that moment, it became clear to me that he also longed for the same thing I did. We knew we were defying all social norms and risking losing everything, but we also knew we were living in the present, enjoying the passion and complicity we shared. Having made our intentions clear and agreed to keep this adventure a secret, we let ourselves be carried away by the moment. At that instant, nothing else mattered. Not my husband, not whether what we were doing was right or wrong. The only thing that counted was the here and now, the overflowing passion that consumed us. We surrendered completely to each other with no room for regrets or doubts. There was only desire, the need to be together, exploring unknown territory beyond what was morally acceptable. In the midst of all this, we found a release we had never experienced before. It was like finding an escape from the restrictions and expectations that had weighed on us for so long. We went with the flow without worrying about the consequences, for at that moment the most important thing was enjoying each other's company. It was an incredible night, one that leaves you breathless and makes you feel more alive than ever. It had been a long time since I felt that adrenaline, that sensation of being on the edge and letting the moment take you to unknown places. The best part? My husband never found out what happened that night. We kept our encounter a secret, protecting our adventure from unwanted eyes. It's only been a week since it happened, and my husband suspects nothing. We have our secret kept only between my nephew and me. But despite the apparent calm, the longing and desire to relive those moments consume me inside. Things, however, are more complicated now. I know I can't give in to temptation again, but the passion is strong. I also know I can't risk being discovered. Spending more time together could expose us and put my marriage in danger. Although the idea of being with my nephew again seduces me, I know I must resist for the sake of everyone. He started sending me messages on WhatsApp, expressing his desire for us to meet again. His insistence is tempting, but I know I can't take the risk. I asked him to stop messaging me, explaining that my husband could see them and find us out. Every time my phone buzzes with a notification from him, I feel the temptation to relive that moment. But at the same time, a chill down my spine reminds me of the danger it represents. I don't want to ignore his messages, but I know it's the right thing to do. I can't risk being found out. So, I begged him to stop contacting me, saying it would be better if we stayed apart for a while. Despite my request, he keeps insisting. Every day I receive more messages from him, expressing his desire to be with me again. For those who are listening to this story, I ask, do you think there's anything wrong with my affair with my nephew? I know I was unfaithful to my husband, but does that really matter? After all, it was just an affair, right? We've all had moments of weakness, moments when we gave in to temptation and let ourselves be carried away by desire. Who hasn't had an affair at some point in their life? Still, I wonder, what do those who hear this story think of me? Do they judge me for it? Am I condemned for being unfaithful to my husband? I know what I did may seem wrong to some, but I also know I'm just a human being with desires and needs like anyone else. I'm not trying to justify what I did, but I won't blame myself either. So I ask you, what do you think of me? Was I wrong or is this normal? I'd like to know your opinion.